Radio X.
You're listening to Exposure on Radio X. I'm John Kennedy, and that is R.E.M. with What's the Frequency, Kenneth? It is the opening track to their Monster album from 1994, and it's just come out again, 25th anniversary reissue, and I'm very pleased to say that I've got Michael and Mike from the band here to talk us through it track by track tonight. We're going to play you the whole thing, and we're going to play the special new remix, the new glossy remix put together by Scott Litt. Now, I get the impression that both Scott and yourselves were not entirely happy with the original mix of the album.
Oh, that's not accurate at all.
It was
Oh,
more,
really?
It was more Scott than us.
Yeah.
We were all fine with it. It kind of did what we wanted it to do.
Yeah.
But Scott, being the sound engineer, producer man that he is, started thinking pretty soon after the record came out. He was like, "Damn, I wish I'd turn the vocals up and the guitars down." And I'm perfectly fine with where they are. But we trust him, of course. He was such a big part of our sound and our success for so many years that we said, all right, have at it. Do what you want to do. And it's always good to get someone's perspective that's different than yours, but you trust. And so that's what we got from him.
Yeah. Well, I thought I'd go with the remix option tonight in terms of which tracks to play, which version. And I've kind of gone through listening to the original album I had, then listened to the remastered version and listening to the remix. And I thought, you know what? People would enjoy hearing these remix tracks. So it's just got a brighter feel to it somehow.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
that's well said, yeah.
Well, the voice is louder, so of course you should play it.
Yeah. I like it. So, I mean, what were you going for then? If you can cast your mind way back to 1993, was that when you first started working on Monster?
I guess we started writing it in 93, mostly 94. We knew we were going to tour, so the number one thing was we wanted to write songs that would be loud and fun to play and would stand in contrast to the more somber songs that were on Automatic for the People and to some extent Out of Time. So we wanted to have something counterpoint to that. And so that was the actual sound of the record, and that's what we were looking for. So, and then we got a lot of fun noise on there. Peter was rediscovering the electric guitar, so that was fun for him to write these super loud songs.
This record has chutzpah. It's got swagger, and we pulled that from our love of glam rock, which was a moment in music that certainly has a lot to do with Britain. But from the U.S., you had the New York Dolls and again the Stooges, and to some degree the Velvet Underground, in terms of that swagger, that kind of distance and irony and humor as a part of the sound and as a part of the attitude. And that's something that we went in with the idea of creating a record that we could tour with that was raw and loud. The two records before that were our biggest sellers ever. We were at the top of our game in terms of popularity. People had never heard us perform those songs live, but they were all really quiet. So we needed some loud, raw music, and that's what we went in to do.
Yeah, because you'd had a kind of break from performing live, hadn't you? You'd kind of given yourself some time off.
It had been 5 years.
From that.
Yeah, 89 had been the last tour. And
so you were kind of getting itchy feet?
Bill Berry got itchy feet. I think I could have sat home and not done interviews for another 10 years. But he insisted that we tour or split up the band, and so we launched the tour.
So that's quite an ultimatum, isn't it?
He was that kind of guy.
I mean, that is why we started the band to play music. Making records in the beginning was just a way to get more gigs. And obviously we got better at it and enjoyed making them, but really we were a band to play music and play it live.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about this whole reissue, really, is that it's a big operation in that there are 5 CDs, but 2 of those CDs are a live recording of you performing in 1995 in Chicago, and 10 of the 12 songs on Monster are performed as part of that show, which I think is really interesting because bands are a bit tentative with their new records about just how they kind of balance the set with how many new songs they can do. And usually it starts out as 2 or 3, and then maybe by the end of the tour, they're doing the majority of the album. But you went straight in there.
Yeah. We had enough hits that we could keep the more casual fans ameliorated or interested enough to stay for 2 hours, and then I think the real fans were excited to hear all this new material.
Well, we were always on to the next thing anyway. I mean, if you listen to our shows from the 80s, we were playing songs from the next record before the next record even came out because we were already writing them, and that's one way to whip those songs into shape is to play them live before you record them so that by the time you go in the studio, you know what they're supposed to sound like and what they're supposed to be doing.
You've worked out the kinks.
Yeah, and what's the frequency, Kenneth, is the opening track on that live set. And one of the interesting things about this whole new box is that you can compare and contrast the different versions throughout the course of the development of the album. And that's what I've been doing. And we might talk about that a little bit. But what's the frequency, Kenneth, has a nice kind of glam swagger to it, as you were saying, Michael. I mean, the songs evolved just through being in a live room together. I think you tried that approach for this album.
Yeah, but also the wah-wah pedal and just all the effects had a lot to do with it.
Right.
I mean, Crush with Eyeliner, Bill had to play two Peters
Tremolo.
Right. And rather than following the drums were following an effect on the guitar. So it really altered. It turned everything upside down in a really, I think, interesting way.
Yeah. So because Peter was rediscovering his love of the electric guitar and pedals.
Yes,
Lots of
more the guitar than pedals, but there were some pedals involved. And we did actually, I think it was Scott Litt's idea to, in the rehearsals for this, we put it in a big room with a PA as though it were a live show. And we rehearsed the songs with everything except the crowd. And I think that helps give it, it gave it the feel that we were looking for, that would fill up an arena and reach the back row, which is, something you always want to think about.
Yeah. And so in terms of the guitar sounds, I mean, how did that affect what you were doing, Mike? Because you end up doing lots of different things, don't you, on an R.E.M. record?
Peter always left me room. Peter's guitar playing was always the sort of thing that left me room to fill it up in whatever way I saw fit. This one was a little different in that he didn't arpeggiate as much as he normally did. It was a little more bar chords, a little more slamming rock, quote-unquote, chords. But it was fine. I was up for it. It's, the great thing about R.E.M. is we were familiar with so many different kinds of music that we could dabble in a little bit in lots of different types. And this, like Michael has pointed out, this is our first foray into what we consider sort of glam rock, something with a lot of swagger, something was totally different than the last two records. So, I played quote-unquote rock bass, and it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, and it seems quite contemporary as well. I mean, you hear traces of other bands emerging from the late 80s, early 90s, like My Bloody Valentine in there, or Pixies in there. You can see how this would have sat, and it did sit nicely with all that was going on.
I guess it did in the general, zeitgeist. For us, it was a complete left turn, and a lot of our fans were, especially the more casual ones that had just come on board with Automatic. They were very surprised. They were not expecting this, and that's fine. We like surprising people.
I don't know if sonically anyone was pushing it that hard towards glam rock, but certainly with Brett Anderson and Suede, with the Blue Aeroplanes, you had an embracing of glam rock and how that presents itself, particularly coming from Britain. Of course, you would get that,
Yeah,
you guys always nailed the image thing.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you were also aware of that stuff that was going on. So, because in theory, a band who's not out there playing live could be detached from the rest of the world. But I never thought that. But you could, that could be one of the reasons that you detach yourself, to get away from whatever's going on.
And Jarvis, how could we forget Jarvis? Of course.
True, yeah. Oh, I love this idea, these British references that you're pulling on for this record. It's really
Come on,
exciting.
no, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Huh?
it does. Oh, completely. So Kenneth, was there a Kenneth? What's the frequency, Kenneth?
There was no Kenneth. What's a frequency, Kenneth, is a term that came in the song, came to be understood as just a feeling of complete chaos and misunderstanding. And that's actually, after the song came out and was a big hit in the U.S., that's kind of what it became more known for than what it came from. It was referencing an incident where a very famous news anchor, Dan Rather, was attacked in Central Park by a guy who kept asking him the question, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" It made no sense.
Right.
Until much later. Long after the song was a hit, they actually discovered the guy who, I think there's some story about it. I don't care.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
but it had a specific incident that led to you using that phrase.
Using the phrase, "What's a frequency, Kenneth?" Yeah.
Wow.
So that's where it came from.
Yeah.
But in the song, it's about an older guy who's trying to embrace and understand and latch onto a younger generation's energy and is completely horribly failing at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
he just never gets it right.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah. So with Crush with Eyeliner, because there do seem to be themes within the record, and people often comment about Monster about these themes. This is their appraisal of society. This is to do with their reaction to celebrity. And it's all very well people applying their own interpretation on your work, but you're here and you can shed the light. So Crush with Eyeliner always seems to be about an obsession or an obsessive person.
It is. Yep. You know it. There it is. You're right.
But combined with that's the interesting thing. So with this record, there's these glam, noisy, distorted sounds, and then that you've got la la la's and all these kind of catchy melodies within there too, and then interesting turns of phrase, and so there's quite a lot of different things to pick up on and take us to different places.
There's so much.
I always loved a good hook.
Yeah, a lot of
the more hooks you can throw into a song, the better.
That's true, and that's one thing I love to do as well. And part of this is because there's a lot of ironic distance in these songs.
Yeah.
There are characters and there are identities and there are costumes that you wear that you're winking as you're being that person. You're still going, yeah, well, this is all. This is me, but it's not me, and it isn't. So I don't know. There's a lot of things you can do when you have that sort of ironic distance. You can play with it a little more.
Yeah, and the music seems to, tie in with that obsession angle, and it's quite hypnotic, and pulses through the whole course of Crush with Eyeliner. It's interesting.
And then we brought in Thurston Moore to do the background vocal, which was exactly perfect.
So Thurston's on backing vocals, because there seems to be different information about Thurston's involvement with this record, suggesting that he's on a couple of other songs as well, but he's just on this one.
I think it's just the one.
I think it's just.
Because when I looked at the original sleeve, that's the one that was credited.
Yeah.
And,
well, we love Sonic Youth. We've known them forever.
Yeah.
And in fact, we took them out on tour in '95, along with Radiohead and.
Yeah, those must have been pretty amazing.
Oasis and Cranberries, and it was there were a lot of really great bands at that period, at that time.
And did you give Thurston instruction about what kind of backing vocal he
I knew
should
exactly what I wanted. I was like, do Thurston.
Yeah, right. Be dry. That's no problem for him.
King of Comedy. Well, when I first saw that, I immediately thought of the film with Robert De Niro.
Of course.
And does it link into that?
Nah, well, maybe a bit. Yeah, there was. Running through that was they were playing with celebrity and how that impacts people and fame and a darker side of that. So it makes sense.
Yeah,
the scene in the phone booth. I think you should die of cancer. Is it that, or is that Woody Allen?
I'm not sure. It's a long time since I've seen that
Sandra
movie.
Bernhardt kidnaps. No, who kidnaps De Niro?
I can't remember now.
Jerry Lewis, maybe. Who knows?
Jerry Lewis is involved. Doesn't De Niro?
De Niro kidnaps Jerry Lewis,
yeah.
and Sandra Bernhardt is a part of it. That's what it is. Yeah. So it spins off the movie. It's not my favorite track on the record, I have to say. I'm not going to say anything bad about it, but I wish that I had worked a little bit harder. I remember writing it, and I remember I was in another writer's block, and I finished it actually in room 69 at the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles, a room that was first introduced to me by Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth.
Wow.
Well, that song is, we were all trying for something that we hadn't really done before. We were trying to make that song really mechanical and kind of electronic and not human. We were trying to take the human element out of that song. And we might have succeeded at that a little too well. So, we tried to play that live, I think literally twice, and said, this isn't working. So it was out of the set. That's why there are only 10 of the 12 songs on the live.
Yeah, because, things like the cymbals sound really thin on King of Comedy. Is that part of the mechanical...
I'm sure it was. I have. Yeah. That's one. I can't really listen to that one too much because it's just so weird. I think what the hell were we doing there? But yes, it's a very mechanized version of R.E.M. and way out of character for us.
Yeah. But I guess it does kind of connect to the themes. You talk about commodity and that kind of thing. But you also mention sexuality as well, which is interesting. Was that the first song that you would mention sexuality directly?
Oh, hell no.
No. Directly in that way?
No. Go back to Pretty Persuasion.
Right, okay.
On the first album.
Way back to the first
album. It's pretty fucking obvious. And then Seven Chinese Brothers. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
I Don't Sleep, I Dream is the next song on Monster. And this wasn't played live, as far as I know.
Oh, it was.
It was?
Yeah,
Right.
Because
okay.
talk about swagger. That's a song where I got to strap on a guitar and play, and I'm putting that in quotations for your audience there. Play quote unquote guitar. So it was completely stolen, lifted from Elvis Presley. It was just a look, But it was funny because I think everyone knew that I couldn't actually play guitar, and if they were looking, I was playing two chords not very well, and my amp wasn't turned up very loud. But it was just I just needed to have that kind of like machismo to pull through the set to make it work a little bit.
Yeah.
To balance the femininity.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, I mean, did you ever stretch that to other songs and wear a guitar for a...
No. I don't play guitar.
You get one.
I can't play a B or an F.
So, how did I Don't Sleep, I Dream evolve? Can you remember?
No, I mean, it was... that's such a strange song. I like listening to it, but it's really misty how it actually came about in terms of music.
I don't remember writing the lyric. I remember the music. I remember responding to the music. I don't remember how the lyric came out.
We may have all been asleep when we did that. I'm not
well,
sure.
That would be appropriate.
It makes sense,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? 25 years down the line, something that would be an intense experience at the time, creating this album. It's interesting to know how much remains.
It is weird.
Just because, this would have been a priority in your life at this point, I guess, in some ways, making this record. And then, further down the line, 25 years down the line.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it's just funny what sticks with you because the idea is to get it done. It's like you're not thinking at the time about the process and whether it's important or not. It's just how can I best realize this song and then move on to the next one. So sometimes things will stick with you, but sometimes it just moves right into the past.
That's what I love about this, about looking back 25 years. That's what I love about this whole project is that we're pulling back the curtain. We're looking at process and we're saying, these are the demo tapes. This is me at my most vulnerable, presenting an idea or a song or a lyric for the first time in the studio, sometimes not even with reverb on my voice, and just trying to work through the melodies and work through the words and work through the ideas, the narrative. What's a character going to be in the song? What's the song going to be about? How's it going to touch people emotionally, or will it? And that's what I love about doing this kind of project, is that we're able to kind of go back a quarter of a century and look at who we were. I was 33 years old. We had released 8 albums at that point, 2 of which sold over 20 million copies. It was incredible to me. I look back, I'm 59 now. I look great, but I'm 59, and I look back at this 33-year-old and go, how on earth did we accomplish that? How did we manage to pull this off?
Yeah. But, and you can also look back and work out how you did.
Well, in terms of
hard work.
If you can remember, yeah.
To actually answer your question in terms of the song, I now, in looking back, which we're not very good at, but this provides us with an opportunity to do so, and also Peter and Bill, to look back and kind of think about what were we doing, what were we thinking, what drove this or that idea or choice or decision. I realized that a lot of, going all the way back to naming the band R.E.M., a lot of thematically, a lot of what this is about is our dreamscape and how significant and important that is to ideas and to thinking and that's something that we now find ourselves almost 20 years into the 21st century. Where are our dreams going to land? How important will they be to us in another 10 years with the advent of digital technology, with everything, with the way that social media is changing, the way we look at things, the way we look at ourselves, the way we debate, the way we converse, everything that's going on now in culture. What are our dreams going to be? I think dreaming is very, very important. And the place that as a musician, as a lyricist, as a songwriter, as an artist in general, the place that I always like to push towards is instinct and the mistakes, like that's where God lives, and that's where you find the inspiration that comes from somewhere else. You don't know where. You don't need to question it. You know when it's real, you know when it's authentic, and you run with that. You turn your thinking brain off. And I go back to, it's fascinating to me that neither Mike nor I know where that song came from. Maybe it just didn't matter, or maybe it came from somewhere else and we didn't question it. It just popped out.
Yeah. And it just seems so appropriate that is the case. Star 69, it wasn't technically a single, but it seemed like a single, and it even got into the charts, I think, as a single through airplay in the US.
Yeah, we're sneaky that way.
Yeah.
We made a great video for it, which also wound up in the package. Yeah.
Right. Fantastic. And Star 69 now, does that still exist as a thing?
I think on a landline you can push star 16. I'm not sure.
Right.
That's a good question.
So this was a last number redial option.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Last number redial.
So you'd press star 69 and find out who rang you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's how the guy figures out the crime.
Yeah.
It's a little detective
It's a
story.
whodunit.
It's a whodunit. It's a whodunit. But the guy knows who done it because he's got star 69 on his new cellular device.
Right.
Yep.
So this is embracing new technology at the time.
Yeah.
No, so that's interesting. And so you wrote a little detective story around it. Did the music come first then, and you were looking for ideas to place on?
The music always came first.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it was
With one exception, Ebo the Letter
Right.
was written as a letter, and then the music came. They played it for me on tour in a sound check, and I ran backstage and grabbed the letter and recited it, and someone recorded it, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And that obviously
But
features on the next album. You mentioned.
But over 31
Save that.
31 years, the
Yeah.
music always came first.
Yeah. So, and in writing a detective story, so how did you approach this? Was this just a challenge to yourself?
It was fun. I think the singer-songwriter Vic Chestnut, who came out of Athens, Georgia, I produced his first 2 albums. He's astonishing. He's no longer with us. He died. An astonishing singer-songwriter and thinker, and with a very great sense of humor. Vic would pick words that he would try to integrate into song lyrics, and you could always pick them out. Once you knew that, you could find it was usually 5 or 6 syllable words that he would try to work into a lyric. But he would use words like squirrely, to describe a squirrel. And so I took a little page from Vic, who I knew quite well at that point, and I put squirrelies into the lyric of Star 69 as that's what the police and everyone thought had caused this warehouse fire, and I knew that it was arson, and I knew that it was the guy who had just called me. So I'm saying, squirrelies didn't chew the wires.
That's interesting because I didn't know that's where you got that, and I always thought that didn't sound like you.
Squirrelies? Nope, it
what
sounds
an
like Vic
unusual
Chestnut.
choice of words for you to
Right. So it came from Vic Chestnut.
learn something new.
Is it an Athens, Georgia saying? Does everybody in Athens?
Well,
do
if you're
squirrels?
acting squirrely, it means you're being a bit weird. It's like you're on drugs or something's a little off. So the word squirrely means something, but you would refer to squirrels as squirrelies. It's like a silly childish thing to do.
Yeah, it's kind of inventive wordplay, having fun with language kind of thing.
Thank you, Vic.
Yeah, amazing artist.
He was incredible.
I guess I was introduced to the work of Vic Chestnut through the work of R.E.M. Really,
Well.
Amazing. And musically, can you remember where Star 69 came from, Mike?
It was Peter's idea, the song, but I liked it. I feel that's a very punk rock song in the sense of some of the punk rock I like that's very poppy punk, like the Ramones, that sort of thing. It's very... it's
Buzzcocks.
It's Buzzcocks. Yes, exactly. It's just sort of happy agitation. And it's really fun to play. And that's a song I always got excited about during the set. I was ready for that one to come up.
Yeah. With the next couple of tracks on the album, with Strange Currencies and Tongue, it's as if you shift into another area, I think, with the use of organ on these 2 tracks. And, you were saying, Mike, how, you listen to such a wide range of music and can draw on a lot of different interests. And I think that shows up in these next 2 songs. And I find it interesting, the idea thing about... let's try and make something we can play live. Let's try and make something a bit more upbeat and a bit more in your face, so we can, shake things up in comparison to our last album when we finally go out on the road. And yet you can't help yourselves because of the band and the people that you are by drawing on other things as well. So I hear a bit of soul in Strange Currencies, and there's a kind of country thing going on there too.
Well, while one of the guiding forces of making this record was songs to play live, heavy, loud rock songs to play live, we're still making a record, and we want our records to be a journey from the beginning to the end that the listener can go on. So that's still the greater purpose of the record, is to create 45 minutes of a trip that you can take. So on that trip, you don't want to just beat someone over the head with tremolo or what have you. So obviously we're trying to make the record as complete as possible. And one of the great things about R.E.M. was that we did have a lot of influences, and we were able to write different styles of songs. And if we just took the best of each, we'd write 25 songs and try to take, whichever 10 or 12 appealed to Michael to write lyrics to, and which we thought were the best 10 or 12 just in general, and hopefully diversify the record a little bit.
Yeah, which it certainly does. And I mean, there's even maybe an echo of Everybody Hurts in Strange Currencies, do you think?
It's total coincidence.
People keep saying that.
They're both in 6/4 time. That's
Right.
the only thing they have in common. There's only so many meters you can write songs in unless you start getting into math rock or weirdo prog rock.
No.
Exactly. So some of those are 6/4 and 3/4, and those songs will always have that in common. But that's about all they have.
Yeah, and there's the kind of organ has a nice swelling aspect to it with Strange Currency. So who's playing the organ on this track?
I was the keyboard player most of the time.
Yeah.
So the Hammond is an amazing instrument, and you have to be careful with it because as Peter angrily pointed out one time, it takes up all the space. And it really can do that. So you have to. I never played it with two. I very seldom played it with two hands. I never was the Rick Wakeman 2 keyboard banks and all this noise thing. It was just I found 2 or 3 notes that elevated the song and that fit in with the guitars and everything else and didn't dominate. And that's what I tried to do.
And I always loved, particularly with R.E.M., I always loved a good sustain under the voice. To me, that always complemented my voice and made it feel that much richer and that much more emotive and evocative.
Yeah. And the Strange Currencies in question, Michael?
Yeah.
What are there? What are these electric currencies? Are these financial?
It is electric. It's very electric. I remember being in a record store, a large record store in Australia. This must have been 1989. And there were posters for this group I'd never heard of before called Inksix. And I was like, what? Number one, I'm like, these graphics are incredible. And what are you playing? I'm like, Inksys, I've never heard of this. They were all over. It was a 2-story record store. I was looking up, all I saw was Inksys and these incredible black and white and red graphics. And then they were playing this music. I was like, what the hell is this? Who's the singer? They're like, it's in Excess. I'm like, who's that? I never heard of him. Of course, it was Australia. Of course, it was Michael Hutchence. I took so much from Michael Hutchence. And Strange Currencies is the song. I went back to him and said, listen, man, I lifted directly from you, especially the middle 8. This is you. That guy contains such swagger, such charisma. He, more than any singer, I think, of our generation, could pick up a room in one hand and drop them on their head without even thinking about it. He was just astonishing. And I met him through Bono. They were very close friends. And Bono and I both took a whole lot from Michael. He was an incredible inspiration.
Interesting. And it's interesting thinking about Michael because he was from that same scene that gave us Nick Cave and all of those bands that emerged from that. And yet they took it in a more pop direction and got the global international success pretty well, in some ways, pretty quickly. No, probably because of Michael's amazing charisma. No.
And I mean,
Great song.
They had an insanely brilliant songwriter. I think the keyboard guy was the one who did most of the heavy lifting there, but that was a great band. But he was just incredible, and I had the opportunity actually before he passed away. I was like, thank you for that song. It was a new way for me to sing. I didn't use that kind of soul Motown-y kind of thing, and it's odd to me that it came through Michael for me to return to that, especially with Mike and Bill in the band and the references that they pulled in. But it was a new way of singing for me.
Yeah. It is R.E.M. with Tongue. It's the 7th song on their Monster album, 25 years old this year. It's just come out in a special remixed, remastered, revisioned form, possibly, depending on your viewpoint. We got Michael and Mike from R.E.M. here talking us through the whole thing track by track. And I mentioned that the organ comes in with Strange Currencies and it continues with Tongue. And on the album, it flows really nicely. And I mean, I love that organ sound. And it kind of hints to me it's the kind of soul band, a kind of bar soul band that R.E.M. could and maybe were in some ways, at some point.
Well, like you said, it's all in there. That one was, I wrote the piano part at my girlfriend at the time's house on this rinky-dink little, it's like almost like a spinet piano. And it had that sort of, I don't know, it was hard to tell exactly what the feel that was, but I really loved that part. And I said, okay, I'm going to fill it up with keyboards and do this really soul. I was trying to do a little kind of Booker T thing with the organ because it felt like a sexy song, and if you do the Hammond right, you can pull some sex out of it, and that's what I was trying to do with that part.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And backing vocals, who does the backing vocals on this one? They sound really great, and it's in contrast to the lead vocals, quite falsetto on tongue.
It sure is. Well, I was going for a Smokey Robinson, Johnny Mercer kind of thing there. Prince, who I didn't like very much as a person, but he was a brilliant songwriter. Who did the backing vocals? What are the backing vocals?
Because I look at you and I often think of you, Mike, as doing backing vocals in R.E.M. But
usually.
But I'm trying to think. I don't remember the backing vocals on Tongue. I'd have to hear it.
They sound great. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Again, I was probably trying to be thematically, cool, like Stax records, Booker T kind of soulful stuff.
Yeah, fitting into that. And in terms of the words, what were you going for?
Devastating. I mean, it's one of the harshest lyrics I think I ever wrote. But it's something that we had all, I think, probably experienced, and so it's as raw as it gets. It's as brutal as it gets. And I was writing from a female perspective, which for me again was a very, very new thing. I had, I think that might have been the first time that I set out to write from a female perspective. The thing that I love about the lyric is that in the end, she realizes that the way that this relationship makes her feel is like a caramel that's been unwrapped and dropped on the floor and kicked into a corner and is now covered with dust and cat hair. This useless, sticky, sad thing.
Ouch.
And she's come through it in the end, I hope. I hope that in the end there's this acknowledgement and this understanding that this is not something that has to continue.
Powerful stuff. Bang and Blame is the next song.
So, to counter that.
Yeah.
Here's some swagger for you. Jesus.
It's interesting, isn't it? But it's cleverly sequenced. You want these contrasts within the music, and this seems to return to that rock thing that you were talking about in terms of a blueprint for Monster, of trying to play with noise and get things a bit rowdier again. And are there a lot of different people involved in this? It seems to be, looking at the original sleeve notes, it says a lot of people, I think,
a bunch of singers. Well, Rain Phoenix, Ane Diaz, Luke Regel, and Linda Stipe, my sister, were all visiting us in the studio at that point, and they're all singers. They're all singer-songwriters. And we needed something that would made this song feel different from what we had done before. So I don't think R.E.M. had used outside backing vocalists very much. We had worked with KRS-One at that point.
Kate.
We had worked with Kate Pearson, but that was more duet. So it was a new thing for us. And I'm doing that thing where the voice has those kind of lilting curly cues at the end of the phrases, which is again completely pulling from Slade, from T-Rex, from Bowie, from that kind of that super effeminate, swaggering glam rock thing. That would wind up later. We were talking about Bernard Butler. That later I would wind up producing Velvet Goldmine with Todd Haynes, the movie about glam rock, and pull all these people in to work on that, including members of Radiohead and the original members of Brian Ferry and Brian Eno sat down at a breakfast table together for the first time in 10 years. That was an incredible experience. That came a few years later, but yeah.
Amazing. That's quite a summit.
It was incredible.
Bringing the two Brians back together.
Eno dropped it was the first time I'd met him. No, it was the second time I'd met him. But the first time I was so, I basically locked myself in the bathroom the first time I met him. I just couldn't handle being around him. He's so smart and amazing and had done so much to inspire me and us. But he put a recorder down on the breakfast table and recorded the conversation. And I thought, well, that's really odd. And then I went, well, that's Brian Eno, so he can do whatever the fuck he wants. If he wants to record my voice and use it later, then bully for him. I can't think of a better person to do it.
Yeah, fantastic. And with Bang and Blame, the verses seem quite gentle in a way, and then the chorus gets, accusatory, I suppose.
Agitated.
And yes, exactly, yeah.
Well, there are consequences to your actions, and if your motivations are impure, then the consequences could be dire.
Yeah.
That's what that song always made me think.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember when we had the conversation about Automatic for the People, and so many of the songs seem to have a resonance now, and I guess that was in 2017. But, it's interesting listening to Monster again, because some of the topics, say co-modification, celebrity, and the kind of individual journey through modern society, these are motifs and themes that seem very current again, don't they?
Yeah, very much.
And these are lessons that every generation has to learn. Therefore, they're always going to be timely because somebody's out there learning them as we speak, even if we already know them.
Keep in mind, also, this was the first time that I was speaking publicly about my sexuality, but I had also gone from being someone who was famous through R.E.M. Amongst people who were roughly our age and loved music to, with Losing My Religion, someone who was insanely recognizable everywhere I went and really, really famous after that music video. That was it. And so, I'd shaved my head for the first time. I spoke about my sexuality for the first time. At that point in music, it was Katie Lang and Boy George and no one else. And so it was not an easy, place for me to be. But I took that and ran with it. I did what I could with it.
Yeah. Importantly, no, it was important that you were there doing that. No.
Thanks.
No, but it's true. It is R.E.M. with I Took Your Name, the 9th song on their album Monster, which has just come out 25 years down the line. We're playing you the whole thing tonight because we've got Mike and Michael here talking us through it track by track. And the vocals, how did you record these? I mean, I know that you used a loudhailer on stage sometimes.
What?
A loudhailer, I don't know.
Megaphone.
Oh, megaphone.
Megaphone, yeah.
Loudhailer.
Loudhailer,
Oh,
yes.
that's a good term. Let me put that in my little notebook. Loudhailer. Okay.
Yeah, British term, I suppose.
Wow, that's a good
but
one.
you'd use a megaphone on stage sometimes, and I mean, it sounds like a kind of megaphone is used in this, is it? Or
I think it's
I'm sorry, what song are we talking about?
I Took Your Name.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it may as well be a loudhailer. Yeah.
There are types of microphones you can use that will give you that sort of sound. You can also check the EQ in certain ways that will give it that thing.
Yeah.
I think we recorded with a Neumann 67, and then we recorded with an old mic like Elvis Presley would have used.
Old RCA
Yeah,
mic. I can't
an
remember
RCA
that.
mic side by side.
Yeah.
And again, swagger. That's just, I'm like spitting out the words. The primary line, of course, being, I don't want to be Iggy Pop, but if that's what it takes, hey. Someone who goes way back in our history, but Iggy has always had a soft place in his heart for Mike Mills, and Iggy has never given me the time of day as many times as
Really?
I've seen him and said, "Hello, Iggy, good to see you." He just kind of looks for Mike, and
Strange currencies indeed. Yeah, I don't know what the connection is, but every time we
it's
see each
intellect.
other, it's like, hey Jim, hey Mike, and yeah, okay.
I think
Wow.
I think it's intellect. I think he really likes the way you think.
You're right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Did you ever tour with Iggy?
No,
No. Ever
Done-
play any shows with him?
We did one show with him.
in Spain.
No,
Yes.
No, did we?
Yeah. We played with him in Spain at a festival.
That's right. It was
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. But you kind of met through other circumstances or
Other circumstances. He did a show in Athens once that devolved into a typical '80s party, and then
Tell the story,
I'm
Mike.
not telling. No, sir.
I know that
Not
dirt.
telling that story. But anyway, that was our first meeting, and then
really
there've just been several subsequent ones here and there.
Right. It's an interesting thing. I never thought of the idea that somebody might take a shine to one particular member of the band and single them out each time.
You just never know.
Yeah. So, but you call in Iggy's name into the song
Yeah.
to illustrate that if you need to become Iggy-like, then you will.
Then I will,
Yeah.
but I'd rather not.
Yeah. Why? Or
Well,
why?
it's just it's a persona, of course.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
again playing with masks, identities, and personas.
Yeah, amazing. And obviously, it seems to be appropriate though to call in the name of Iggy Pop within this album.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
he's around
all
this
over it.
record a lot, even if he's not named.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, it's interesting because we talk about glam, but with Velvet Underground and with the Stooges, glam wouldn't have had the same je ne sais quoi about it, would it? There was something about what they did that helped set up that
And the
blueprint.
dolls.
Yeah.
Look at those pictures of the dolls. I mean,
Yeah.
the Gem Spa, the newsstand that they're standing in front of for the photo shoot for their first album is still there. It's the same sign on the corner of 8th and 2nd Avenue, I think, or 8th and 1st Ave. It's still there in New York. But those guys were there in 1970, 71 in high heels. It was shocking, completely shocking. David Johansen's daughter is doing a really interesting project now called Juju. It's kind of like Radio X, but It's spelled kind of similar. It sounds Chinese, but it's like a web series that she does with a couple of friends, and it's one of the most polarizing and phenomenally interesting things I've seen in the past 5 years.
I'm going to have to check that out. Excellent. So Let Me In is the next song on Monster. How did this song come about?
Well, musically, obviously, Kurt's death shook us to our core and, froze the recording in a moment. At some point, not long after that, I was sitting with the guitar and I was, I guess I described it as I was angrily melancholic, and I just started writing these chords and they kind of just came out. And I didn't really even play it more than 3 or 4 times before it was done. And we just threw it down and Michael heard it and was inspired.
Someone hit record. Someone was there and turned on the machine and got it on tape. And then I couldn't. It just embodied completely the feeling at that moment of helplessness and of grief and sadness and darkness. And we shut down for a good 10 days at least. We were not able to really do much. But that broke the spell. I wrote the lyrics in 5 minutes and recorded it in as much time.
Yeah,
and that was it. It was my plea to Kurt. Too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I've read that, it was you thought of it as an imagined phone call, the kind of phone call that you would be making.
There were a lot of phone calls before the imagined one.
Yeah.
Really trying to pull him out of. He was in a very, very dark place, and we all knew it, and we were trying. We were doing everything we could to try to help, but it wasn't enough.
It's such a passionate performance, and I was interested to see that it was part of the live set. You did perform this song, and it is captured on that Chicago set. And on the Monster album, it's just the guitar and the vocal. And then on the live performance, you add a tiny bit of organ, maybe.
Peter
the organ's on the original mix,
right?
On it, yeah. Peter was not normally a keyboard player, and we were also up in the air over this. That it seemed to make sense to do something that you don't normally do, just to draw on something you don't normally draw from.
And so, I mean, as a song to perform, because it was such an emotional experience for you all, to perform it, was that a positive or something that you put yourselves through, or did it help release?
No, I think it was incredibly cathartic, and it helped to cauterize a moment that not only we but the entire audience, the audience who maybe had never met or knew Kurt in person, but certainly knew who he was, what he represented, his music, his voice, his pain. It provided a catharsis and helped, as I say, cauterize that moment and throw it back out.
And how do you feel about it now, 25 years on?
Well, live it took on a different feeling through that. You could feel, when you're on stage, you really in a second, you know what's happening in the audience, and then you try to respond to it, and you try to keep that rolling for 2 hours. It was quite clear what that song was doing to people. The voice changed a lot. I started actually singing in my range and not going into the falsetto for the high note. And I can't remember if that's here on the Chicago recording or not. That came a little bit later. But the song changed a lot in performing it live.
Yeah. And now, how do you regard the song? And can you listen to it? And have you listened to it for this project?
Yes. And, I this might just be me, but I tend to remember the positive parts. I think of this song and I think of all the great music that he made and what a actually really cool guy he was.
He was so cool.
And so when I hear it, it makes me smile rather than makes me sad.
It is R.E.M. on X-Posure at Radio X with Circus Envy, the penultimate track on their Monster album, which has just celebrated its 25th anniversary. Michael Stipe, Mike Mills, here tonight talking us through the whole thing, track by track. And Circus Envy definitely fits the blueprint of let's rock, let's get noisy, let's kind of shake things up after creating 2 beautiful albums, but were, I guess, quieter than what you had been doing when you first started out.
Just a bit.
Yeah.
This one was fun. I didn't use fuzz bass very often because it's a thing that a little goes a long way. The same thing with the tremolo. To have 2 songs that are driven by tremolo guitar on this record was we're taking a chance with that. So with the fuzz bass on this, it just seemed like that sort of song. It's a buzzy, angry, weird little song, and it was one of my favorites actually to play.
It's interesting, and as part of this whole box set, you've put in Revolution, which was used in the Batman film
Yes.
that was written around this time, and it's also part of the live set. And the live version particularly, it's in the live set. Why didn't it make it to Monster? Because it sounds great, and it seems to go really nicely with something like Circus Envy.
It does, and it would have. You just don't want to. Again, albums are a journey, and sometimes that journey can be too long. You don't want to have one song too many on the record. Revolution could have fit, but we thought there were just better ones that suited the album better. I love that song.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, particularly within the live set, it's like, wow, this sounds fantastic. No, this is like a single that should have been, or something. No, especially because it's kind of direct. It's a lot more direct than some of the other material, I suppose. So, listening to it now, out of the blue, it sounds like, oh, that's a hit.
It's got that kind of seen it, done it, been it attitude, but with vulnerability, and that feels like that embodies that moment in time. I think a lot of films, a lot of music, people had this feeling of kind of vulnerability but helplessness, and but also that kind of, again, that distance that you're putting up a front because that's the only thing you know to do to try to protect yourself.
And you close the album with You. And when I was listening to this again, the little guitar licks remind me of Bob Mould in a way, from Husker Du, and obviously they were a band that you toured with quite a lot, that you were friends with, and I wondered whether that would have been intentional or just subconscious, or...
I doubt that Peter was consciously channeling Bob, but there was a great deal of mutual respect there for sure. So you never know. I mean, sometimes things come out of you and you don't know where they come from or why they were there in the first place. So it's entirely possible.
Yeah. And there's a lovely Eastern droney quality to you, which I really like. And what are the words about? What are you trying to get at with?
I read the lyrics when I put the package together. I'm trying to think of what it's obsessive love, and me pushing my voice to places it had never gone before, particularly at the end of the song, really just screeching it out. I don't have that kind of voice. I wish I did, but in this what key is that in?
I don't remember.
Make a note to myself. In that key and in that song, I was able to do something with my voice that I had never done before, and that I don't often or can't often do.
Yeah, it's very intense. It's an intense way to finish off the Monster.
It is very intense, but there's a little. This is just engineer nerd thing, but at the very, very end of You kind of have to listen with headphones to find it. But there's a little noise. It sounds like little birdies chirping, and I didn't even notice it until Pat McCarthy pointed out, the engineer. He said, "Do you hear the birdies?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Put the headphones on." So I put them on, and just at the very end, as it fades out, there's this nice little noise of little birdies in there.
Wow.
Fantastic. We'll be listening intently now.
It feels like a desert song, so they would be cactus birds. Yeah.
Thirsty
To
birds.
me, it feels like one of the,
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming here.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
Through the whole album. It's been brilliant. And, I love this ongoing project. Do you think it has further mileage, new adventures in hi-fi? I mean,
Well, as it turns out, the next album is my favorite.
Right. So,
it's in my top 2, let's say.
Well, fingers crossed. These anniversaries keep rolling around. It's amazing.
Whether you like them or not, they do.
Radio X.